Welcome to the Meat and Potatoes podcast. We're here with Matt Jones, who is the CTO and co-founder of Nodal Power. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yes. We have all sorts of fun conversations on this podcast, but this one's cool because there's like science and engineering, and then it benefits a lot of people. So give us a rundown of what Nodal Power is, and then we'll talk about the founding story after that.
Sure. Nodal Power develops and operates landfill gas power plants. So we collect methane at landfills. Landfills create methane through the decomposition of all the stuff you throw in the landfill. Methane is bad for the atmosphere, and so we collect it and we turn it into power, and we send that power either to a data center that mines Bitcoin or to the grid, depending on economics.
All right. So as with most things, illustrations would be good, but people can go to your website and see a good one
Yeah,
of
for
how
sure.
it is, because it's landfills, and then there's the filtration
Yep.
and biogas flares,
Yep, that's right.
and then it either goes to the power plant, electrical grid, or like data centers or Bitcoin, right?
Yep, that's right.
So for those that have never been to a landfill, I've been to a bunch, both big and small.
Sure.
That's where everybody's garbage ends up, right?
Yep, the trash company picks up your trash can on the curb some day of the week and takes that trash to the landfill.
Apple rinds, diapers,
You name it.
unimaginable
Yep.
horrors, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And it's been a long time since I was at the landfill out in Salt Lake, but I remember bulldozers and seagulls, right?
Yep.
And so what you guys would do for those that need to visualize it would be get all of that and build structure around it that captures the gas.
That's right. Yeah. Landfills generally work in what they call cells. So they'll fill one cell up and they'll bulldoze over. That's the bulldozers you saw. And they'll cap it, is what they call it. And that's just a big tarp, essentially, that you poke holes in with straws. And the gas rises to the top, and the tarp kind of captures it. And the straws suck out that gas so that we can use it to generate power instead of letting it go into the atmosphere.
Yeah, because it is combustible.
It is very combustible. In fact, the EPA requires landfills of a certain size to combust it. They flare it, which is a term to burn it. And you'll see those candlesticks with the burning sometimes at plants. That's used to keep the methane from going to the atmosphere.
Yeah. So in a capped landfill, what is, of all the garbage in there, what is producing the most methane?
Anything organic material, your apple rinds, your food that you throw away. The things that don't is easier to identify. Construction material doesn't produce much methane or any at all. Steel, concrete, that kind of thing. So anything that you would throw away that would decomposes into methane.
All right. So I guess a little bit similar like drilling an oil well. You won't drill it unless there's enough oil there to get your return on investment. How does it work in y'all's industry? Like how big does it need to be?
Well, it used to need to be pretty big. Just the bigger landfills. You can think of big cities, Salt Lake, of course, Los Angeles, or any of those where it gets economical to build a power plant on there. There are other uses outside of power plants. You can clean the gas up and put it in a pipeline, which will then end up being combusted somewhere, I guess, in your home if you turn on your stove. But usually the small ones or mid-sized ones were left alone. It just wasn't economical. As you can imagine, building power plants is very expensive. It's a lot of infrastructure, a lot of heavy capex, big engines. So you need a big landfill to kind of justify that cost to get it to the grid. What we think is special for our company is that we can kind of dip into that medium and low tier and make it economical for them. So we can go to those people who were previously flaring and help them either build a power plant new if they've never had one, or take one that wasn't doing very well, and we can kind of optimize it.
Very cool. And so unlike an oil reserve, when it's gone, there will always be more stuff at the landfill.
More trash. People tend to produce trash. So landfills are growing. They're going to continue to grow. And even after you close a landfill, it tends to produce methane for decades. So
Yeah.
it's not a depleting source, but an increasing source.
Very interesting. All right, so I think people understand the premise of it. And again, they can go to your website to see some great visualizations. But The founding story of this company, right? Like this is not an easy endeavor. There's a lot that goes into it. How did this team come together?
Yeah, it probably started with me. I've been mining Bitcoin since the days you could do it with a computer, which is probably a decade ago now. So I've always kind of been in the crypto Bitcoin mining space. I was at Microsoft at the time when I had a good friend who was also at Microsoft on the finance side approach me about mining Bitcoin more at scale instead of in your computers at home, doing it at a data center. He was on the finance team for data center finance and expansion, so he knows that math really well to do that kind of stuff at scale. Now, Bitcoin mining is mostly just power. It's very intensive. It's known as high performance compute. It takes a lot of energy. People tend to knock it for the amount of energy it takes. So we kind of got together and called our other co-founder, who was a friend of his that was in the power industry, that had been in the power industry for a long time, did energy trading, had built power plants, had managed large grids, was the COO of a utility here in Utah, actually, at the time. So we kind of all three bonded together and figured out, well, how can we mine Bitcoin in an economical way? We started in the oil and gas fields, actually, with natural gas that was stranded in an oil field. If it has nowhere to go, it has no economic value. So we could get it really at a cheap price and mine Bitcoin with it. And we did that for a couple years. Ultimately decided that what if we changed it from Bitcoin being the end goal? You know, you get all these Bitcoiners where that's what they want. I must have Bitcoin, hodl for the rest of my life. Bitcoin's the best.
Yeah.
And instead making it what if Bitcoin were a means to an end? And that's when we kind of pivoted to the landfill gas space of what if we use Bitcoin, which is profitable, and use that to fund building power plants or to fund connecting existing power plants to the grid, or used it to optimize these power plants that weren't running very well or were running only some of the time. You can use that profitability to kind of trade off. And that has a broader benefit than just getting Bitcoin, right? I can now create energy. I can put it on the grid. We see nowadays, especially, this grid is getting old. It's getting stressed. We saw what happened in California not a month or two ago with all the heat. People are desperate for energy. Texas last year was kind of the same in the winter months. So adding energy to the grid was our goal. And landfill gas is especially nice because it's carbon negative when you do it. Instead of getting that methane up into the atmosphere, we're now burning it for a beneficial use. So it's a really nice green story. It's really nice on getting methane from going into the atmosphere. We burn it instead. And I know when you are flaring, you burn it, but engines are more efficient at burning it. So you're actually saving even more than you would if you were flaring.
Yeah.
You earn a little bit of Bitcoin. Sometimes you sell that Bitcoin to pay for interconnection or for the power plant. So I'm not collecting a bunch of Bitcoin on the end, right? But I feel like we're doing good for the world too by increasing the power, the green power that we're putting on the grid.
Yeah. So the end result could be like the Bitcoining, or it could be some 86-year-old running their air conditioner
That's right.
during a heat wave.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And they could give zero craps about the Bitcoin, but they're happy that they've got the air conditioner.
That's right. Yeah. When demand is needed, the energy market is very democratic in that when demand is up, price goes up. And so we increase supply. And I'll turn off my Bitcoin miner and I'll send it to the grid because I know demand is high. I want to provide that energy to the people when they need it. But at 3 a.m, when everyone's asleep and no one's AC is running, price is cheap, no one needs the energy, might as well use it to mine Bitcoin.
Yeah, very cool. And you guys had experience, right? You're CTO and the co-founders brought their senses and acumen. But at some point you got to do it, right?
Yeah.
So where are you guys in that process?
We have an operating facility already, power plant in the southwest of the United States. It's just over 3 megawatts. That is grid tied. So some of the time we mine Bitcoin, sometimes we send it to the grid, depending on economics. And we have another one development here in Utah, just north of Salt Lake City, that should be ready here in November. That one is not yet grid tied. So we can develop these things that are not on the grid. You can mine Bitcoin in the short term to kind of help that profitability and wait till it does get grid tied. And then you have that option to kind of switch it between grid and Bitcoin.
Yeah. So are you guys limited by anything, like if there's a landfill too far away from the grid, or do all of these obstacles have solutions?
They mostly have solutions. I haven't found one yet from the EPA's database that we couldn't work with. Obviously, if you're farther away from a grid tie, it becomes less economical to grid tie, and maybe you just want to mine Bitcoin with it, which is still great because I'm saving methane from going to the atmosphere. But with our mission and goal to ultimately grid tie everything to provide benefits to the consumer, it's just a more upfront cost that we'll have to consider in expanding to that landfill.
Yeah. You mentioned, was it 3 megawatts?
Yeah, the 3 megawatt one is live.
What is that as far as like a city or households, do you know?
3 megawatts will provide 3,000.
Like a suburb of Salt Lake or a smaller
Yeah,
town?
yeah, a town
Yeah. Very
of
cool.
homes.
All right. So there's the engineering side on the, the algorithms and Bitcoin and all of that. And then there's the actual engineering of building
Yeah,
these plants. How big are they in relation to maybe a big power plant that people see driving to the airport?
they're quite a bit smaller. They probably fit in the 3 megawatt one probably fits in a 15,000 square foot space, but it's just more compact. You still need a lot of the same things to get it to the grid. You need transformers to move power up and down in voltage. You have your engines generating power that weigh 100,000 pounds each. Like, this is big, heavy infrastructure. You need the data center itself, can be pretty big. It's a shipping container, 40 foot by 20 foot. So you throw all that in there, and then you need cleaning stuff, right? The methane gas doesn't come out just straight methane. It comes from a landfill. So there's dirt and your shampoo and everything else from the landfill in there that needs kind of cleaned and sorted a little bit, and that takes a little bit of space as well. But still a lot smaller than the power plant you'd see. In fact, you wouldn't even know it was a power plant if you drove by it. You would just see a sheet metal building off to the side of a landfill and not know what's in there. You storing trucks or something in there, as far as you know.
Gotcha. All right. So if we took out the Bitcoin side for the economics for the company, you guys, like, this takes a while to build these, right?
Sure.
It's not like putting a new button on a website that
That's right.
makes checkout easier. As you're building the business plan and the model, how do you guys raise money? How do you convince people that this is a great business? It's a lot different than what you might have been used to, like at
Yeah.
Microsoft.
Yeah, for sure. It was a little bit difficult to raise our seed round. We raised our seed round about a year ago. It's hard because when you talk to VCs, they're not used to CapEx. They're not used to infrastructure. When you tell them you need several $1 million for engines and facility, they get confused.
Yeah.
Why is that not going to engineers?
Yeah.
It's going to hard infrastructure. So they don't fully get it. But when you go to the energy side, which we also talk to, and you mentioned Bitcoin, their eyes just glaze over and they're done.
Yeah.
To them, it was too risky of an asset. Although if you look at energy prices now, that's kind of risky too. So so it was kind of hard to find someone that was in the middle, that understood both energy and kind of tech. We did actually find a really nice partner with that, located in Utah. Space Station has been wonderful, and they've helped us with our first raise a year ago, and we actually just started raising money again. We've deployed the capital we raised in the seed round for these two facilities. We have one up and running, so we have data showing that it's profitable. We're cash flow positive, which is also confusing for VCs usually on a startup, that we can kind of print money from the second we turn it on.
Yeah.
So it's time to expand. We have a large pipeline. We got a lot of landfills that are very interested in our technology because we can pay them money where before they were just burning it.
Yeah.
And we can help the atmosphere at the same time. So it was tough at first, but I think now that we kind of shown and proven the model, we're hoping this time around it'll be a little bit easier. But I guess we'll see here in the next couple of months.
Yeah. That is a good benefit to have, that you can be cash flow positive and show it.
It helps me sleep at night a little more. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So I assume you guys have a lot of data and numbers, and then there's like you probably have a good idea of the number of landfills in Utah or maybe the entire United States.
Hmm.
But there's a lot, I would assume.
There are a ton. Yeah, just in our addressable market where we kind of fit on that small and mid-tier size, we could power 35 million homes, which is a lot of homes, right? That's half the United States. Or sorry, 3.5 million, which is any state or Utah. We could power all of Utah.
Yeah. And that should get the attention of every person, I would imagine.
We hope so. I mean, it's also great because it's not a coal plant, right? I'm generating base load energy. You know, people talk about wind and solar, and wind and solar is wonderful, but when the wind isn't blowing or the sun isn't shining, you're not getting energy. Whereas at a landfill, it's green energy and it's always on.
Yeah. As you guys build out, what are like the best markets, best scenarios for you? And what are those phone calls or first meetings like with the landfill owners or proprietors?
Yeah, there's certain ways you can go about it. There are private landfill owners that own one or two landfills. Maybe they founded the town or something, or they were the ones that were tapped to own the landfill. There are municipalities, which are kind of city or government run or multiple cities. And then you have the big private or big public ones. You can think of, I don't know, waste management is probably the one that comes to mind for most people. So you can approach them differently. They have different incentives, obviously, to care about it. The public ones will care more about money. The municipalities might care less about money. They're doing a service for their people. So the way you approach them is a little bit different. If you go to a municipality, more about saving them the cost of running the flare. Running a flare costs money.
Yeah.
If you talk to them about the ESG story and saving from methane, they'll care more about that. The public companies obviously care about ESG. They're ESG mandated, so that's a nice story to bring them. They tend to care less about the money on it. They're not going to get as much money as they do collecting the trash anyway.
Yeah.
So it's a small line item for them, so it's generally ESG story for them. And the private landfill owners care about the money, like how much money can I give you? And of course, each one gets a little bit different nervous about the Bitcoin mining too. So you kind of have to approach that differently.
Yeah.
Some of them you have to tell them, hey, I'll sell my Bitcoin every single day. So there's no risk there. And I can give you the money. And others are, especially at the private landfill owners, some of them get excited about Bitcoin. They're like, hey, pay me in Bitcoin. This is great.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends on who you go to. But all of them, we've seen interest from all of them, and we're happy to deploy against any of those.
I love it. Each one's it's kind of separate negotiations,
Yeah.
separate personalities.
Yeah.
Very cool. And I assume it's beneficial that you've been in the Bitcoin game since forever. You've seen the ups, the downs, all of that, and you can tell them a thing or two.
Well, I've suffered through some of the ups and downs. That's right. Yeah, I've got my battle wounds for sure.
Yeah. And the Bitcoin community in general, what is their thought on Nodal Power?
We get mixed responses from them. Some of them are big fans of what we do, mostly because of the ESG story. And, Bitcoin gets a hard rap for the amount of energy it wastes and uses, especially the coal and some of the places that mine Bitcoin. So the green side of it, they really latch onto. Others who are the real hardcore Bitcoiners just hate that that's not my end goal, that I would dare mine Bitcoin and sell it. Or to pay for a facility, or to how dare I turn it off and send it to the grid instead? So it's kind of a mixed bag. Some love it, some hate it, but that hasn't stopped us either way.
Yeah. Interesting world that you live in. Possibly a simple-minded question, but will there ever be the end of Bitcoin mining? Is it ever going to run out?
I don't think so. No. I mean, I guess there is a last Bitcoin that comes in whatever it is, 300-400 years or something. But even after Bitcoin rewards are gone, you can live off of transaction fees or supporting the network another way. My expectation is that Bitcoin value will go up over time. I may not believe that millions of dollars that some people claim, but enough to support transaction fees and continue. And that's also the benefit of our business here, is if it doesn't, then you still have a grid-tied power plant that you can just sell power to all the time.
Yeah.
We lose a little bit of profitability not having the Bitcoin mining, but it's still having hard assets that provide service to the community.
Yeah. So you kind of insinuated you guys are going to be fundraising again. I would imagine.
Yep.
So with this, you've already gone through the rigmarole. You've gotten the smart questions, the dumb questions. How are you guys going to adjust as you go out again?
Uh, I think this time the focus for us is less on Bitcoin. It's matured in the last year. People are surprisingly less concerned about it, probably because it has dropped in value. When it was $60,000 last time, that's all anybody wanted to talk about because it was so valuable.
Yeah.
Now people are more concerned about the energy side, especially seeing what's happening in Europe with the Ukraine-Russia stuff going on. And
Yeah.
everyone's very concerned about energy independence and making sure that we can take care of the grid here, especially with coal plants planned to come offline. So our focus in chats are a lot more about that side of things than it was the Bitcoin side of things, which I'm totally okay with because then I don't have to talk as much in those meetings. I can defer to Brian, who's our power guy, and
There you
I
go.
can just sit back and be comfortable knowing that we still are plenty profitable when Bitcoin's down.
Yeah. So after you've got the deal inked and everyone's in agreement, how long does it take to build the plant and get the flip switched?
Flip the switch. This last year was a little bit rougher because of supply chain issues. You know, you miss some screw on some thing somewhere that's only manufactured in Seoul, Korea, and you got to wait 3 more weeks for something small. That's kind of eased up. Our long lead time now is permitting. You need air permits for these, even though we feel like they're doing a good service for it. But, you know, the Department of Air Quality still needs to review it. And that's great. But that usually takes the longest lead time, which is somewhere around 6 months from start to end.
All right. And I assume the goal is like get all of that down to the smallest amount of time as possible and just keep going.
Totally, yeah. These facilities we have are very much rinse, repeat, copy, paste. We've designed it once. There's a lot of IP in there that we've had to develop on our first one and learnings. You know, landfill gas is not easy. It's way less combustible than the gasoline you get in your car or the natural gas that comes out of the wells. So you need to work around that. But we feel like we've got that on our first site now. So it's very copy, paste, print, and repeat. So it should be relatively smooth for the upcoming ones.
Very cool. Well, I love this. It mixes all sorts of things together in one cauldron, helping save the environment, throwing power back to the grid, some Bitcoin, and like good old-fashioned entrepreneurship. So kudos to you and your team. This is a really cool story. And website is
Nodalpower.com.
NODL.
Nodal. Yep.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much, Matt. I would look forward to going to one of your plants one day and see it in person.
Yeah, we should have you up. That would be cool.
Yep. Next time we'll go on site and do
Love it.
this up there.
Yeah, great.
Okay. Thank you.
Appreciate it.